I hope this is. Well, that's a keyboard, all right. Hi, I'm Cowboy. This is the Entire Robot. I want to talk a little bit about streaming, live streaming on location. Some of the stuff that I've learned with JRS1 doing some live, the Entire Robot gigs at at some local venues around. The whole streaming thing in the studio, it's pretty straightforward. You just run OBS on your computer, and then your computer does the streaming. And if you have a laptop, you could put OBS on your laptop, bring it with you, and do your streaming there like exactly the same way as you might do it in the studio. So streaming is pretty straightforward if you have a laptop, and that's really, if you just want to replicate your OBS setup live, that works fine. The only real requirement, I would say, is if you're going to stream live, have a wired Ethernet connection, okay? I do regular streaming in the studio here and out and about. I do streaming with JRS1, who is also in the chat. Jeremy, JRS, if you have something to say, feel free to add in the chat to anything I'm saying here. In the studio, it's easy to stream. You just run OBS on your computer. You have a wired connection, ideally. If you're streaming in a club on location, etc., ideally, you want to have a really long Ethernet cable and use Ethernet. So that's tip one for live streaming outside of your studio is use an Ethernet cable. Talk to them in advance and see if they have an Ethernet connection for you to use, and then use a long-ass Ethernet cable. I have like it's like a 50-footer that I just keep in my bag with me at all times for gigs, because I'm always going to need something like that. Wi-Fi, you can stream over Wi-Fi. It's a lot less reliable. You might get dropouts, etc. All the reasons why people recommend against using Wi-Fi. It's also more complex. Now, if you just have a laptop, you can connect your laptop to their Wi-Fi and use their Wi-Fi. No problem. But the instant your setup starts to get more complex, and you have multiple things that might use Wi-Fi, or you don't really trust that their network is well secured, or that who knows what's running on that network, etc., it starts to get a little more complicated, because you don't necessarily just want to connect your laptop directly to their Wi-Fi or directly to their network. And that's why I actually use a very small router. It's made by a company called Microtic. It's actually the HAP AX2 or something like that, but it's pretty small. It runs off a wall wart power supply. It has like a WAN port and like 4 LAN ports, all Ethernet, and then it also does Wi-Fi routing. And so basically, the first rule is use Ethernet, right? The second rule is if you have multiple network devices, which I'll get into in a sec, you don't want to just connect all of that stuff to their network, because their network might be configured in such a way where those things can't communicate with one another. And so like if you're using like Ableton Link, for example, which is like a way of transmitting clock over the network, over Wi-Fi, possibly Ethernet as well, you don't want to just start connecting all of your individual devices to someone else's network, because who knows what kind of weird rules they have set up about how those things can communicate or can't communicate, or how much bandwidth they're allocated, etc. So I always bring a dedicated little Wi-Fi router, and I connect the Ethernet from them into the WAN port of my router. So basically that's like my router is creating its own little tiny network that I'll connect all of my devices to. And then that is connected to their network via the WAN port. And so that's a really useful approach to having a network set up for when you're actually out and about in someone else's network. Don't rely on the sanity of their network to connect all your devices to. Create your own network with a router. I happen to use this Microtic one because it's really small. It works well, it's very configurable. but like you can literally use any router. And so basically what we have when we gig live, I have the streaming setup, which if I switch my camera view over here, you'll kind of see. So this right here is a box that I've built. This is a custom thing. I've got a little GoPro hooked up to it right now, so you can see, like, you know, whatever's on the screen. This box right here, this is a Pelican 1400 case, and I have, let's see, put the camera down for a sec. So this case is something I've kind of built. The 1400, you know, is a decent size case. You can see it's about that deep or so. And in this case, I've done a bunch of 3D printing stuff. So the case is really just an empty case, and I've designed a back and some clamps to hold this 13-inch screen in here, which actually shows like a multi-view, or it will show, so you can see like what you're seeing right here is like there are 4 different camera views. There's the preview in the program. There's like audio levels. There's like the streaming status, the assets that I might have as like an overlay, and then I can switch to like show different, like here's a camera, or you know, just show the multi-view, etc. There's a bunch of options there. So this case, I have a 13-inch screen in here. I have an ATEM Mini Pro ISO video switcher, and I actually do all of my streaming live with this ATEM video switcher. This is kind of like the brains of my on-location streaming is an ATEM Mini Pro ISO. They make a handful of different variations of this. This one, the ISO means that it can also record each individual, it has like 4 inputs, it can record each individual input to an SSD, so that you can later on take all of your video sources and composite them, do whatever you want with them after the fact, in addition to the stream that gets streamed and recorded. So this box right here, you know, it's kind of funny. If people were asking about, hey, I want to stream, like in general, the very first thing I would say is, well, okay, like if you want to stream, just get a webcam and hook it up to your laptop, right? And like anyone can do that and stream. But if you're starting like, okay, I want to set up my studio, I wanted to get a little more complicated, I mean, you could start getting video capture devices for your laptop, or your computer, and you can get like individual or dual or quad capture devices. I actually have 2 quad capture cards in my computer, so I can capture a whole bunch of different video sources around my studio. But this device right here, it's a standalone device that takes 4 HDMI inputs and allows some degree of upstream and downstream keying, basically like showing overlays over the graphics or using masks and stuff with the graphics, with the video, so you can have graphics over the video or do interesting transitions. It allows you to record to a hard drive that's a totally standalone unit. So like this right here, I bought this, I think I got it on sale for about $400. I think they're up to $500. If you don't need the ISO recording, it's like $100 less. That's the thing that lets you record individual video sources to an SSD instead of you know, just the composite video source. And you can use these buttons to switch in between them. Right here, I've only got the one video source here right now, but like if I had these other ones here, you can see there's a slight red border here. If I click on 2, now this has a red border, and that's what you see. So you can kind of like switch between them. You basically have a full control over like which video is going out to the stream or the recording, and also like you have 2 audio inputs in here, so you can have like 2 stereo audio ins or microphone ins, and you can send those in. It has like compressors and some basic effects built in. You can also take the audio from the HDMI, and so I can say like, oh, I want source 1, I'm gonna actually use its audio built into the HDMI, but not for the other ones. And as you switch between them, it can switch the audio. There's a bunch of like kind of video switching stuff here. Typically when we're doing this stuff live, I don't use any video audio. Like I don't use any of the audio from the HDMI streams. Those are just cameras. The audio is coming from our mixing console, our mixing board. So this box right here, it kind of fits. If you Google this, you'll see it's a small box, and I've just kind of dropped it in. There's cable inputs all on the back of this, and those are actually under this panel. So let me talk about this setup. Now that I've kind of talked about this device is what we use for streaming live, because I can stick it in a box and I don't have to worry about a laptop. It's way less expensive. I can automate it. I can do some, all the stuff that I need to do live for streaming, and I can put graphic overlays on it, kind of static overlays like images or logos. Like I have, let's see, so there's like a title screen. Like if I take a look at, let's see, my program out, you can see, like I can show just logos, and so I have logos in the bottom corners, like a lower thirds kind of thing. And I have a title screen, and I have some intro text that I put here, or like intermission text or ending text. So these are kind of like overlays. And now you can see that I'm actually clicking around on a Stream Deck here. So there's this ATEM video switcher, and then there's also a Stream Deck. And so this is a bit of an advanced thing. And this is actually, we're starting to get into why I have a router inside of this box. Like you can see what I have on top here. I've got the ATEM, a Stream Deck, power input, USB output, and a few network ports, HDMI ports, and audio input ports. Underneath this top layer, in the bottom of this, there's actually a power supply, there's a Raspberry Pi, there's a block that I distribute power, and then there's the router is actually underneath this stuff. And I have a blower fan mounted in here to pull air in here and pull it past the ATEM and the router and the power supply to cool it if I don't have this fan, which unfortunately makes a little noise, which isn't a problem when we're performing live when there's speakers and stuff. If I didn't have this blower fan here, the temps would get way too hot in this thing, so I need active cooling. And I could have probably cut a hole in the side of the case and mounted the fan there and used a regular, not a blower fan. It would have been quieter, but I didn't want to cut into the case, so I did all this without cutting into the case. Anyways, digression. I've got like the ATEM here, and I can control it with these buttons. I'll get to what the Pi is doing in a second. So, in fact, I'm getting there right now. So I can control the ATEM with these buttons, and the ATEM is really designed for like when you are streaming, someone is literally sitting at the ATEM and pressing the buttons, or maybe you are pressing the buttons, but the buttons are being pressed to transition between different video sources and do all that stuff. But like, what if you want to automate that? Like, there is a way to automate the ATEM, and that is literally running their software on your computer connected up to this thing. And if I wanted to bring a computer, would I even be using the ATEM in the first place? Like maybe I would just use a computer with a capture device or something like that, and I would just do it all in OBS. Yeah, the cooling. I overlooked it initially until the temps got so hot that the PLA that I printed in the base of this just totally melted. So did some temperature tests. I wanted to make sure that I didn't have any problems. Most things inside are rated at 50 degrees Celsius. The ATEM is rated at 40 degrees Celsius, and the temps were getting up over 50. So with the active cooling here, the temps are in around 34 Celsius. So, and they haven't really gone over that. So the cooling, this is just one blower, 75 millimeter blower motor maybe, so that handles everything. And by the way, I haven't done it yet, but I'm still iterating on the design. Once I am done with this design, I'm just gonna share all of my files so that people can build this if they want to. If they're crazy like I am and want a project, absolutely can do this yourself. So I'll share all that when I'm done. But that's probably a few weeks out at this point. So anyways, the ATEM is, it's kind of meant to be manually controlled, and you can automate it to some degree if you're running their software on a PC or a Mac. So I don't really, part of the point of this was not to bring a laptop, which is actually kind of ironic because I always bring the Surface Pro with me, because the mixer that we use a Soundcraft UI 24R mixer, and that uses Jeremy and I both have software running on the computer to actually control that mixer. So I do have a computer with me, and I do run the ATEM software in this computer, but I still don't want to have to touch it. I don't have to do anything. I really don't want to use that software. So this is where the Raspberry Pi and the Stream Deck come in. There is a software called BitFocus Companion. It is free, open source software that will run on a computer or a Raspberry Pi or pretty much anything. And what BitFocus Companion does is it uses a Stream Deck or something like a Stream Deck. It actually is compatible with all the Stream Decks, and it's compatible with a few other non-Elgato devices that are similar to Stream Decks. It also has a web interface, but what it does is it allows you, let's just use the Stream Deck here as an example, it allows you to basically completely define what all of the buttons do on the Stream Deck dynamically through a web interface. Like the inside of this box, there's a Raspberry Pi running BitFocus Companion. And if I go over to this laptop, log in. So like right here, running on this laptop, unfortunately the lighting isn't the best. I'm connected to BitFocus Companion running on the Raspberry Pi. So this setup right here, this computer, this Videotron 9000, which I'm calling it. Inside of it, there's a Raspberry Pi. There's that Wi-Fi router, and so I basically have the WAN port of the router connected to my local network, and then that thing is in here creating its own little network. That network has its own Wi-Fi. My laptop is connected to that, so when I'm at a gig, I just open up my laptop and it's automatically connected to that. The Raspberry Pi, I've got a wire going from the Raspberry Pi into the router, so that is on the network. When we have the Soundcraft mixer, instead of using its built-in Wi-Fi, which is garbage, every mixer that has built-in Wi-Fi, that Wi-Fi is pretty much garbage. We just run a wire from that mixer into one of the LAN ports, and which is basically just routed into the router. So all of these ports are routed into devices. The LAN and WAN ports are routed into the router. So basically we've got this computer, Jeremy's computer, the Raspberry Pi inside of here running BitFocus Companion that controls the ATEM is in the router, and then our mixer is on the router. Everything that we do is in that little local network, which has its own firewall and its own rules and stuff like that. And so and when the Ableton, the Push, and our ML Junior link devices, those are all also connected up to the Wi-Fi. So everything is in our own little Wi-Fi. If I wasn't bringing this to a gig, I would still want to bring the router, but I just bring this because I have everything all set up. Yeah, the mixer's connected via Ethernet to one of the LAN ports here. Although it could be connected via Wi-Fi if we wanted to, we just use wires where we can. So the Raspberry Pi runs in here full time. It's when I power this thing on, the Raspberry Pi comes on, everything boots up, and then the Stream Deck just shows the configuration that I've set up in BitFocus Companion. And so some of the things that I've done in BitFocus Companion, now BitFocus Companion, it has a ton of integrations, and the reason I'm using it is because it has a really good ATEM integration. It has integration for a ton of different video switcher devices. It has an integration for Twitch. It has an integration for the Soundcraft mixer, although I haven't even tried that. It has an integration for just general pinging network service. So see this green switch right here, this green button. It doesn't do anything. It's a button, but it literally just says internet. If I pull this cable out, it turns red. And so instead of looking for access lights, activity lights to see am I on the network, I set up this button on BitFocus Companion to turn red when there's no internet, and when I plug this in, it'll turn green when there is internet. It might take a second or two. And the way it does it is through the integration. This button basically pings 8.8.8.8 every 2 seconds. And if it is a successful ping, it's green, and if it's not successful, it's red. So I actually know that I have internet accessibility as soon as I plug in. As soon as that turns green, or if it turns red, I don't have it. I also have dedicated buttons these buttons right here actually switch from the media pool, which I load into, that's one thing I need the laptop for. When you are importing graphics with overlays and stuff like that, the only way to do it that I know of is to use the ATEM software on your laptop. So basically, before a gig, I'll grab the laptop, I'll import my media pool for the different shows that we do. Like if we're playing at Warp and Weft, I'll use Warp and Weft graphics that I've pre-created. If we're playing at Deacon Giles, I'll use Deacon Giles graphics. Any new place I play at, I'll make some new graphics. I'll import those in here, and then these buttons will overlay them on the screen, so I can easily switch them over. And this is, like if I look, this is happening over whatever camera is going on. So this is, if I didn't have the Stream Deck and BitFocus Companion running on a Raspberry Pi in here, I'd have to do it in software, and it would be a pain in the ass. It's really nice to have these dedicated buttons. Another thing I have is I have a button right here to there's a button on the ATEM to record to disk, and another one to start streaming. I have separate buttons on here to do it because these buttons, in addition to toggling recording on and off, they actually show the elapsed time and the remaining time, and the stream one shows my elapsed time and my bit rate. So I customize the buttons to show that information because that's available in the ATEM integration in BitFocus Companion. So, and I have one other button which is really cool, this cycle inputs button. If I click that, now what's going to happen is every 30 seconds, it's going to cycle between the first two video sources. So you can see it's going to cycle between them automatically. The software that they have has it has a macro ability where you can record macros and loop them, but the software has to be running on your computer. It's just kind of a pain in the butt. I've recreated that functionality using kind of the built-in integration stuff inside of BitFocus Companion through the web UI. So you'll see shortly this will switch back to 1. And so it's just kind of fading back and forth every 30 seconds. And so that's because I've set this to fade every 30 seconds. But I mean, I actually, in the BitFocus Companion web view, I could have hard-coded that in, but I actually made a little variable for 30 seconds. And I also made a variable to say which inputs to cycle through, what's the start and the end. So right now I tell it to cycle between 1 and 2, but I could have it cycle between 1 and 3, or 1, 2 and 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 and 4, or whatever. We only use 2 cameras when we're streaming, so I just have it set to cycle between 1 and 2, but I could change that in the web config for the BitFocus Companion. And then there's another panel here. I have a little arrow. When I go to this panel, it allows me to set some stuff. Instead of having to use the software to manually change what the ISO file name is when it's recording them to the SSD, I actually made some buttons for that. And I also made some buttons to choose where I'm streaming to, because by default, I stream to this channel, the entire robot, but anytime I'm testing my stream before, I don't stream to the entire robot. I stream to the entire chatbot, which is my chatbot. So it has a stream channel. And so it's really useful if you have a bot, like a Twitch account that runs a bot that sits in your channel that does bot-like things. I just use that as my dummy test stream place. So I can literally just say, I can click the entire chatbot, and then I can start the stream, and it will actually stream to the entire chatbot. Then I can stop the stream when I'm convinced that everything is fine, set it to stream to the entire robot, and then when I click the button to stream, it'll stream to the entire robot at that point. So this is my basic setup for live streaming. As I said, number one thing, honestly, Ethernet, bring a long ass Ethernet cable. Just bring a 50, 100 footer, just bring a long cat cable, because you never know what your Ethernet situation is going to be. But call them or talk to them up front. If they don't have Ethernet and you're stuck with Wi-Fi, well, it's a little challenging. When you have a laptop and you're streaming on your laptop, you just connect your laptop to Wi-Fi. But if I have a router inside of this box, your router is meant to hook up to the larger network via Ethernet cable. And so getting a router to connect to a wireless network, I actually think this router supports it, but I don't know how to do that. I'm not even sure if it works. Either way, it becomes a lot more complicated when you start having more devices and you want to have them all in a little LAN with a router. Like, how do you get that router connected to an external Wi-Fi? I'm not actually sure if there's a good way. Maybe this router supports it. I have to look into that. I remember reading something about that, which is one of the reasons I bought this router, but I haven't experimented with it yet. So that's Ethernet. And then number 2 is, like build a gigantic box that holds all of this stuff in it. Because before I built this thing, literally every part that makes this, I just had I had a box full of stuff, and every time I showed up at a gig, I would just reconnect it all manually, and it took half an hour. So by putting all of this stuff, I like the ATEM, I like it for live stuff. I'm considering using it in the studio instead of capture cards in my PC. And then just maybe OBS, maybe just taking the mixed video that comes out of this and sending that into a single capture card for OBS to put overlays on top of. Another thing is I could have OBS output its overlays via an HDMI out and then have that be mixed in here. And they do make an 8 input one of these. But it is, it's over $1,000. It's expensive and it's twice as wide. I'm considering that one at some point. I'm still trying to figure it out. But so that's basically the whole thing. BitFocus Companion. And if you're in the Discord and want to ask me about how I've set up the BitFocus Companion stuff, let me know and I'll tell you. I can share some screenshots of what I did or whatever to help you out with the BitFocus Companion. But BitFocus Companion running, I have a Raspberry Pi 4 in here, just mounted, power supplied, etc., with all the other stuff. This kind of complete package, when I'm all done, I literally just I shut it off, I disconnect everything, and then I just close it up, take it with me. That's the whole thing. So, I would recommend that you, if you're not already in the GSG, Actitech link, gsg.live/join, join the Discord, come in there, ask me about my BitFocus Companion setup, remind me to post. I can easily share my in-progress working files and some photos and stuff for what I've done with this so far. It's not done yet, but when I'm done with it, I will post a full bill of materials and I will post the files that I used so you could build your own if you really want to go crazy with it. But that's and this whole thing fits in this Pelican case. And so, when I get to the gig, I literally just open it up, put it on a thing, plug in my cables, I'm ready to go. So it works. It's been working really well. I've used it for a handful of gigs so far. And the one other thing I want to mention, the last thing is, if you use the ATEM Mini, this is the ISO one, when you record a show as ISO and you do video switching and you do downstream keyed graphic overlays and stuff, when you are done saving, in addition to the video files, it saves out it saves out the actual composite video file with the audio. It'll save out the individual video and audio files and the individual graphics. And icing on the cake, it saves out a Blackmagic Design DaVinci Resolve file, which you can pull into DaVinci Resolve, which is free, unless you want to pay for it. Then you can get a much fancier version. It gives you a file you can pull in that literally has all of your videos and audio and transitions already in there. The whole DaVinci Resolve project, it allows you to take this thing that you streamed and just tweak what you did and make it what you want and upload it to YouTube. It's fantastic. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of that. So I do record sound. We have all the audio going through our mixer in addition to going to our headphones and the room mix. We actually have an aux send dedicated. We have 2 aux sends. One stereo pair. Both 2 stereo pairs go into the ATEM and they're both recorded separately. One is our voiceover and the other thing is everything else. So that if we were talking over something and wanted to remove that later on in post, we could. So we use both inputs, one for voiceover, one for all the music stuff.